I'm often curious about how people got to where they were. I've found that it's usually because of a job or family or friends. Rob lived in Idaho for over 40 years, and I was close to that. We lived in a comfortable 3-bedroom house with a big, nice barn for the goats, and we used to have horses. It had a lovely meadow and a big shop for Rob, and I had a sewing room. I had lots of room to roam with the goats. So, why did we end up leaving Idaho? Well, I looked around at the neighborhood, and almost everyone was our age or older, and not everyone was in good health. We lived high up on a mountain that had a steep, narrow road that was okay in the summertime, but in the wintertime, unless we had students that caught the bus, sometimes the county was a little slow about getting to us. We already owned an off-grid cabin at Bourne, Oregon, and we loved spending time there, but it was a 7-hour trip, so it was easy for us to look in that direction. We couldn't find property in Granite, Sumter, or any of that area that fit us, so we ended up looking over at Halfway. I'd always wanted to live in Halfway. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth, I think. So we found 5 acres there, with a very nice house, nice outbuildings, nice barn for the goats, and Rob could build a shop. We moved the fall of 2016 and beat the snow barely. And then when we got done with that, it was time for Rob to build his shop. So we hired 2 of our friends to help him, and it was a cold fall. But fortunately, the snow held off until February. In February, it seemed like it snowed almost every day. It was one of those months when it just snowed and snowed and snowed. Many buildings in Halfway fell down that winter because people expected it to thaw, and it didn't. It just kept stacking up. So you couldn't hardly go down a lane without seeing at least one flattened building. Snow was also stacking up at Bourne, and one of the old buildings there decided to fall down that winter. It just couldn't stand up any longer. One of the nice things about it is the owners are replacing it with the same form it had before. There are only a dozen or so cabins at Bourne. It's a wonderful place. It's got a beautiful little Cracker Creek runs through it. Little Cracker Creek runs into that right next door. There's so much to do. It's called heaven by many of us. It's a very pretty place, these lovely little cabins. You hardly ever see your neighbors. Sometimes we haven't seen neighbors for years and years and years. It seems like we all get there at a different time. Bourne is a ghost town now, but it was once a thriving mining community. I always called that the rock wall, but it was actually the back of the E&E Mine. The only stamp mill that I'm aware of in the area that's still sort of standing is over by Granite on the way to Anthony Lakes. There are still some relics in the area to be observed, but many of them are falling due to the ravages of time. In the next couple of pictures is a structure that's down on Cracker Creek that we think was probably used for mining, but we can't figure out how it was used. If you have any idea, could you please make a comment down below? Occasionally you get lucky and you find something like this bottle. I was hiking up a ridge one day and saw the bottom of it sticking out. I figured it would be like usual in broken pieces and I would just find the end of it. But I was lucky. Area had been logged and cows had stomped over, and it was still in one piece. I was so shocked. Hiking is a passion of mine, and there's no place like Bourne to do it. Everything is straight up and straight down, so it's very, very good exercise. We're fortunate that about 5 miles above Bourne, you have access to the Elkhorn Crest Trail. It gives you opportunities for beautiful views, lots of sightseeing, and along the way there's a phone call to God. I'd like to thank the person who rejuvenated the sign. There's also numerous lakes to visit, and if you're lucky, you'll get to see mountain goats. I've seen them several times on my hikes. The best day I had was when I saw 16 in one day, and I'd have gotten some good pictures, except Miss Ivy didn't appreciate them being in our territory. Back in the valley, we always enjoyed a hike up to this shop, but it was another victim of the winter of 2016-2017. It started caving in then, and now it is completely flat. Most of the old mine entrances have caved in within the last 10 years. We also have a mining claim above Bourne. Has a sweet little cabin on it that's not livable or usable, but it's a very pretty place. I believe Halfway, Oregon is possibly one of the prettiest places in the world. It's at the foot of the Eagle Cap Wilderness Area, and it's got Hell's Canyon Recreation Area next door. We had French doors on our bedroom, and we slept with our head at the foot of the bed so that we could wake up to that beautiful view every morning. 5 acres of beautiful land, a nice 3-bedroom house. I had a room all to myself for my quilting area. We had outdoor sheds. We had a barn, and Rob proceeded to build his shop. We had wonderful neighbors. It was a friendly little community. So why did we only stay 3 years, you ask? Well, that comes later. Building a shop in the middle of the winter is not all that much fun. Fortunately, the snow held off, but it was very cold. Rob hired 2 of our friends to help him, and fortunately they were able to get the roof on right before Christmas, and they had to leave. We not only had to shovel off all the roads, we had to shovel out the fence because the goats kept walking over it. The snow got so deep when the roof slid. Finishing up inside was nice to get out of the cold. Rob and I put the tin around the outside of it, and finally he has a new beautiful shop. Finally the snow is gone and that beautiful green grass starts growing. It's time to drive around the valley and do some sightseeing. It's fun to see what's going on in the spring, and there's several lanes to drive up and down. And then in June it's time to head for the back country. An hour or so away is East Eagle. If you've ever watched the movie Paint Your Wagon, this is where it was filmed. We tried to go for a hike up East Eagle, but in June the creeks are still high, and we soon came to one that we couldn't cross. When I was in my early 20s, we worked at a place called Boulder Park Resort, which is no longer there. I fell in love with the Eagle Caps at that time, and they're still a very special place. We talked our neighbor into taking our ATVs up Clear Creek. Again, you look into the Eagle Cap Wilderness Area. We caught it at just the right time. The lupin were in full bloom. The paintbrushes were in bloom. There was still a little snow left around, but it was just a beautiful day and a beautiful hike, and at the end of the day, we had that lovely sunset. After all that beauty, I don't want to be negative, but I guess you can see that we live pretty close to a road, a paved road. And unfortunately, I'm used to just going out the door and walking off with the goats, and walking up and down this paved road was not my idea of fun. Sometimes when the cows weren't in the pastures, I could walk in the neighbors' pastures. And sometimes in the winter, if the snow wasn't too deep, we could go in the neighbors' pastures. But I just felt confined. I guess I'd lived out in the boonies just a little too long. As much as we loved Bourne, we decided we would sell it. It just wasn't quite right for us. When we go to the mountains, we like to take the goats, the dog, and the cats. And unfortunately, at Bourne, all of us have dogs, and not all dogs like cats. And so it just seemed best for us to try and find a place where we were out by ourselves. One morning, I looked on Craigslist, and happily, I was the first person to call, and we found this beautiful piece of property, 80 acres, completely surrounded by Forest Service. And so we're out in the boonies, all by ourselves, and Bourne is for sale. I don't want to get political, but we found that if Oregon raised all the taxes that they were talking about, we probably weren't going to be able to afford to keep both halfway and our 80 acres. And neither one of us were willing to sell the 80 acres at that point. So that's when we decided to move back to Idaho. So join us next time as we journey to find our property in Idaho. See you then.